Yeah, even if we are infinite consciousness, because so many times I say, hey, it's like it's all beautiful, it's all perfect. But a lot of people get pretty triggered by that. And
Hmm.
it depends what floor you're looking at that perspective from. Because if you are here and you are looking at, some of the things happening in the world, it is tragic, absolutely. But if you step into a place where it is all illusion and it's playing out, and if you step into the awareness that it's all one, and from there created this cosmic game. And after a while, it doesn't just want to experience pleasant stuff. It wants to experience also the dark stuff, the unpleasant stuff, the lessons, the hardship. And it wants to see this, be part of this movie that has you on the edge of your seat of, oh man, death and hurt and pain. And that's, what's, the most enticing, what gets you the deepest into believing you're in a movie.
Juliana
Okay.
Garces, thank you so much for being on the show. It's great to have you. You've got this awesome YouTube channel out there, self-titled Juliana Garces Art, inspired artist with by I guess psychedelic imagery and all this fascinating content on there about tapping into one's creative capacity. Maybe a good place to start for our audience would just be to let them know a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you're from, and how you got to where you are right now.
Yeah, so I am originally from the cosmos, but technically this lifetime from Colombia, and I'm based in the LA area at the moment. Um, but I started my kind of journey. Let me tackle it from a different angle. I started my journey really from kind of growing up between two different countries, I would say. I grew up switching between South America and the United States. And in this kind of switching back and forth, I had some issues with language, to say the least, as a little kid. I started when I was 3, kind of moving. And because I couldn't rely on words, I started to make a lot of art and share that with people. And I realized that I could share an image with anybody that spoke any language and they would get the same feeling, get the message. So I started to realize that art transcended language. And then after some time where my language got better, both English and Spanish, it wasn't an issue anymore, but I continued to make art because I felt like it was magic. Like I was fascinated by how it can transcend language, how it can, the whole saying that it's worth 1,000 words. I thought that was so fascinating. And
Mhm.
then when I was around 12 years old, I started to have a lot of lucid dreams out of nowhere. I didn't know that, lucid dreaming existed. I just started to wake up in my dreams and control them and explore them and be conscious in them. I started to explore various realms, speak to different beings, and my family didn't know what to do with this. They were Catholic and were unaware of these possible experiences. So it kind of ended up being like my own journey to figure this out. I started, Googling what is it to know that how. Why do I know that I'm dreaming in my dreams? And it's like, oh, it's lucid dreaming. And then shortly after I started exiting my body, I learned about astral projection, and that made me so curious about exploring consciousness. So from 12, I started to become very fascinated about finding out what other ways we can explore consciousness, how, there's so much more than what we see. And I started to develop a meditation practice around like 13, 14. And that's still like my foundation. Now that I'm 29, it's like, the thing that balances everything out. And around 16, I started to work with plant medicines. All happened very early on. I don't recommend it for other people, but for my own journey at that moment, I already had a really stable meditation practice. And I started to have these experiences again where um, it transcended words. And I felt like I was in a very similar place that I was when I was a little kid and I couldn't express myself. So I turned to art. I used art as an outlet for those things that transcended words once again, for these visionary states, for these beautiful, blissful realms I was experiencing. And I almost use art. I like to say, like, I go where a camera can't go. And I go to those spaces and I capture that so that people that have similar mystical experiences have almost like a souvenir, a daily reminder, so that they can integrate these experiences, so that we don't just go into these mystical states and then forget about it, and then just go back into our day-to-day lives without applying those incredible lessons of oneness, of unity, of love. So I like to go into these spaces, bring back those visions, and have them be useful for people to inspire them in day to day so that they can apply those lessons that they've learned in similar mystical experiences.
Terrence McKenna would be proud. And what a service you're doing, because not everybody should take psychedelics. And for you to go there, be a grounded person, you mentioned before that you've got a disciplined meditation practice grounding you. You take this stuff seriously, you know. And to do that, to transmit those images through art. I love what you said about, worth 1,000 words and transcends conventional language. Like I agree. Sometimes I struggle with them. Like there's got to be a better way to communicate than talking. And it's like you're communicating creativity itself and all kinds of other stuff that I'm sure you can tell us about. But for whoever's watching this, you should check out our art, because it's cool, it's awesome, and it's from
Thank
the
you.
other side, man. You're going and seeing it. You're like the explorer coming back and showing it to us.
Uh,
Was
uh,
there any fear in the beginning with the dreams? Like, did it take you like a little bit to kind of like ground yourself, or like, because it's kind of out of the ordinary. Not every kid, has lucid dreams or comes back with the visions, kind of what you're talking about. So how did you get more comfortable with things?
yeah, so ironically, it all actually started with nightmares,
Oh,
which is very interesting. I was like, it was almost like I had to go through like a dark night of the soul kind of thing for me to start my whole spiritual path. So around that time was when I was raised Catholic, but I started questioning it all. And now I have a newfound appreciation for that path. But at the time, I started to question it all, and I decided I was atheist. And I was in a dark place. I was getting bullied in school. I was having troubles with my family. A lot of things, kind of chaos for a very little child. And I stated I don't longer believe in God and in anything divine. And very shortly after, I was having these very intense nightmares. And because I think it was a projection of all that chaos. And through these nightmares, there was a specific moment. I remember it very clearly. It was like the classic horror movie where I'm being dragged by the feet by some zombie ladies. And I'm like, ah. And I stopped and I was like, wait, this is a dream. And that was the very first time I became lucid in a dream. And I stopped it and I got up and I was like, I'm going to wake myself up. And I woke up. And once I got up, I was like, whoa, how did I do that? I knew I was dreaming. And I started doing it more. Every time I'd have a nightmare, I would like wake myself up. But then after a while, I was like, hey, instead of waking myself up, let me stay here. Let me make it beautiful. Let me
mm.
make it magical. Let me fly. Let me go to space. And it all started kind of like that. And it was so beautiful. And I started going to these spaces of light, of pure love. I started seeing all these magical beings. And, it was so real that I would walk on the beach and I would feel every single grain of sand on my feet, to the point where it was more HD than regular life. That I
Oh.
started to be like, there's so much more than what we see. I can't say no longer that I am an unbeliever in God, an unbeliever in, divine things. So it was like a lesson that life directly showed me, like almost immediately after, like being like, hey, like I don't believe in anything. It was like, here you go.
Your family's like,
Experience it.
yay! And you're like, hang on.
Yeah, and then I was like, hang on, I'm gonna start meditating and
Right.
taking plant medicine. But they're like, wait,
Yeah.
wait.
Were you listening to any spiritual like when you were going through that? Did you start doing your own kind of like personal research? Who are some of like maybe some mentors or teachers or people that you started like listening to kind of guide you there?
Yeah, so I would say my primary teacher, at the time was Buddha. I was an
Hmm?
avid reader. I loved to read, but I was reading a bunch of fiction books. I'd love reading all sorts of books. I'd have like a giant stack of books by my bedside. I would like rotate them. And once I started having these lucid dreams, I started to become curious. How can I explore consciousness more? So I started to gravitate, okay, towards meditation because I was like, I feel like if you meditate, you can get like deeper into these dreams and stuff. And I started to pick up books on Buddhism, and it resonated with me in such a deep level. That's kind of where I started to get into Eastern philosophy, and I started practicing meditation, and it brought me to these deep spaces of peace, of equanimity, of balance. That I, wanted more, and I started to read more on, Buddhism, and later on Hinduism, and I started yoga practice and working with plant medicines and all that by 16. But by the time I was 16, I wanted to mention I had a very stable meditation practice. I was like disciplined. And at that moment, it was actually a gorgeous experience. It was feelings of unity, of love. And yeah, now, so many of my mystical experiences, I consider myself a visionary, or so much more than plant-based. They're hypnosis, breath work, just, connecting with the divine. There's so many ways, especially for those people that are, don't want to try psychedelics, or there's so many other options, at
Tired
the end of
from
the day.
psychedelics?
Yeah, or tired from
Can't you?
psychedelics. Like
Isn't
we,
there? It's got to be like you got to be able to get like burnt out from too much psychedelic use. Like I get it. There's aliens and
yeah,
gods everywhere.
yeah, absolutely. And at the end of the day, I think that, the human experience is the biggest trip, right? And we
Yeah,
are,
it's
there's
crazy.
psychedelics within us, literally. So like,
Yeah.
there's so many ways of accessing them, especially like very deep states of meditation. I like to do the Vipassana meditation retreats where it's meditating 10 days
That's
for 10 hours
hardcore.
a day.
That's
It's
hardcore.
it's 100 hours in 10 days, and it's very psychedelic. Very,
Yeah.
very.
Oh yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
You seem to have a knack for it. You're like light years ahead on the spiritual journey compared to like most 16-year-olds at the time. Like I think of most, like what were your friends saying? Like like at 16 to have like a
Uh,
steady meditation practice like
I don't know. I was like kind of odd one out. Like, during lunch in school, I'd go and meditate, and people would look at me weird. Or I kind of actually had a little bit of a reputation in my school for being a little odd, because I had a weird incident happen where with dreams, where I dreamt very vividly this particular scene of my math teacher. Uh, she got all angry and started yelling and threw a pen, threw a clipboard, ran out, slammed the door. And it was such an HD, like kind of significant dream that the next day when I woke up and went to school, I started telling everybody. I was like, hey, I had this crazy dream. And I mentioned it to everybody in my math class. I mentioned it to everybody that, like, all my friends. I don't know why. I just felt like it. And guess what happened that day?
oh, I know. She threw it. She threw the pen. She got all
She
angry.
exactly how I said it. And afterwards, like so many people, like the whole school found out because she like ended up quitting. I guess that was like her breaking point. And
Wow.
we didn't have that math teacher for the rest of the year. And everybody knew that the girl that like predicted it and everything,
Wow.
the weird one that meditates during lunch.
That's an awesome story.
Yeah, and carries the
Yeah.
strange artworks with her. So I'd always be
Huh.
in art class and like carrying weird visionary artworks. So
You seem to have it together. Watching your videos and speaking to you, you're lucid, you're saying the right things, and you seem happy. Is that a fair assessment? Like overall, I know life's got struggles, but when you described yourself as being young and maybe a little the odd one out, there's something I feel like kind of pointing out here, which is like, you know, when you're young and you're the weird one, you want to be normal so bad. You like a lot of
mm,
times. I think that happens to people, especially if there's bullying or something involved. It's like, why can't I be normal? But if you remain authentic and you follow it through, like you followed all those prompts, you developed your artistic abilities, and you continue to like seek the truth till you started to find it. It's a success story in that way. So on one side, hang on. If you're the weird kid, you might just be around the corner about to break through to some awesome stuff. And if you're about to bully the weird kid, watch out because they're gonna make something of themselves. You know what I mean? Like you might want to have their insight one day. I just felt like saying that, you know, and on
Yeah,
behalf
that's
of us
beautiful.
weird kids, you know what I mean, back in the day.
Yeah, and after some time, you end up finding your crowd and people that, resonate with what you
Yes.
resonate with. I have so many
Yeah.
incredible friends that, are into all this same stuff I'm into.
Yeah.
And so many of the people from, school when I was younger now message me that saying they're so inspired by what I do and the art I
Awesome.
share and everything. So it's, I think follow your weirdness, follow your passion.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
think our Hindu audience would appreciate me asking you this question. I know you do have a lot of psychedelic influence within your art, but there's also a lot of Hindu influence within your art that maybe comes from some of the trips that you've had and some of the things that you've studied. Maybe you could talk a little bit about some of your encounters with these Hindu gods. Maybe put in, like, I don't know which ones you've met. Well, yeah, maybe just talk about that.
Hmm.
Yeah, so my journey started very heavily based on Buddhist practices, and I loved Hindu philosophy, and I loved reading the books, the Bhagavad Gita, the Vedas, the Upanishads, all those, and I resonated so deeply with the philosophy. But like the thing that kind of stood out as kind of that I didn't comprehend was the deities because I didn't have any personal experience with them. And I'm someone that's huge based on experience it for yourself and don't have blind faith. Like have your own mystical experiences. You're a divine being. You have like the right to seek the truth yourself. And it wasn't until I started working with DMT that I started to go into these spaces and the Hindu deities started to appear. And they started to explain to me how I was like, but isn't it all one? Why are, what are these deities? And it showed me like there's the infinite one, the vastness. But for there to be a cosmic game, for there to be this, it needs to break up into dualities, into split into two. And that's where, Shiva Shakti, yin yang, uh, masculine, feminine, light, dark come in to start the game. And then from there they kind of split, multiply. And that split, a lot of the other deities come in, the universal archetypes, and they exist in these deep meditative realms and DMT realms and lots of ways of accessing that space. And they keep multiplying until we get into these lower down realms, the physical realm where there's so many beings, there's so many animals, so many humans, so much variety of beings. But these archetypes do exist in some space. And in my DMT journeys, I've had the honor of interacting with them, of meeting them. My personal favorite and dearest to my heart is Shiva. Love Shiva. And of course, Kali, Parvati, Ganesha, all these beautiful archetypes. And I've gone to they have like these gorgeous temples there where I go and visit them and talk to them, depending on, what what is right for me in that moment.
I like Ganesha. Kali
Yeah.
seems a little scary at times to me.
The thing with Kali is almost like it's like embracing the darkness of life and seeing God through it also. So
Hmm.
it's like when let's say a DMT journey or a psychedelic journey gets dark, and instead of having aversion towards it, having love towards it and being like, hi, Kali, and like
Oh,
receiving
okay.
it with softness, with
Yeah.
compassion. And then it softens also. And she's such a beautiful representation of the fierce feminine of Mother Nature. She's such a gorgeous archetype, how she holds this incredible duality of beauty and destruction all at once. And she helps me see, even in darkness, how it's all like God in a mask, all God in drags. So
I'd
I
give it a
love her.
try. Just
Yeah,
so she might seem a little frightening when she's got like a necklace of heads. I doesn't mean I
yeah.
wouldn't enter her presence to see what it's about. One thing that's kind of standing out to me in this, and I'm curious as to your insights into this. It seems like creativity and art on its own is a bit of a catalyst towards the mystical. Like if you start creating art, you could, there's a doorway to the mystical. You know what I mean? Like that could activate something within you. You know, your story. I don't remember if it was the first take we took or if it was this one where you talked about being from living in two places at once, Colombia and America, and that you learned to do art as a form of communicating something, transmitting a message, and then you actually found that it sort of transcended language. Would it be, what do you think about somebody going, I've never been very artistic, but I'm going to start trying to be artistic. I'm just going to start scratching things down. I'm going to do my best rendition of Shiva. I'm going to do my best rendition of what I just try to conjure. Do you think that could maybe start a spiritual path for someone just doing something like that?
Most definitely, most definitely. I mean, one of the biggest like kind of cornerstones of what makes art so fascinating, not just visual art, but music, dancing, all these different art forms, is we get into this deep flow state very naturally. Even if the drawing, even if the art isn't good, we if you can manage to create and get into a deep flow state, that is really a deep meditative state. And we can learn to be present and let that creative energy of the universe move through us. It's almost like this universe loves to create. And when we join that stream, we are creating, we're letting it flow through us. It's a very divine thing, especially if we do it consciously. If we say, okay, we're doing this art as a meditation practice, as a spiritual practice, we make it divine. We set intentions before we start. We let the universe move through us and
Mm-hmm.
create what wants to come through, become a vessel for cosmic creativity. Then
That
it can
takes the
become,
pressure off in a way.
yeah, yeah. Then it doesn't matter if it's a scribble,
I'm
if
just
we
doing my
got,
job. I'm just
yeah, yeah,
transmitting what I was given.
exactly. And if we got into a blissful flow state, then enjoy it. And then over time, if you keep doing it, it's just a matter of practice. It gets better. So.
Mm-hmm. So, since we're talking about art here, so what do you recommend for artist block? Yeah, I know you've talked a bit about that in your videos, but like people trying to tap into there are some people out there, like I was a long time before I ever painted or did anything, probably not until my 30s. But there's people out there who are like, I'm just not artistic. How do you say to that? How do you say to them, this is how you find your artistic
Yeah, I
gene?
mean, well, there's kind of two kind of methods. One, if you're already kind of artistic, but you have like an artist block in this moment, the best thing for that is stillness. So taking some moments to meditate and quiet the mind and see what arises. That's where, really profound ideas arises that are deeply inspiring, is not, just from the thinking mind, but quieting down and letting that deeper space come up with the ideas. And that can be also taking a walk, relaxing. So stillness is a huge way of removing artist block, because when we let that kind of inner chatter, the monkey mind relax, and that deeper awareness to come through, that's where, deep inspiration. And another really kind of, if it's more about a starting it thing, is literally just start by a scribble. Like, don't let your mind get in the way. Just grab a pen and just make the first scribble, even if it's just a scribble, and then you already started.
And
You already did the hardest part.
it's always a good idea to keep in mind while you're making it how many compliments you're going to get for having made such an awesome piece of art. Like that'll get you right into the realm of Jesus is sitting there and thinking, I'm going to get so much appreciation for this. No, I'm kidding around. There's a place for, I think, considering how your art will be interpreted. But, earlier you were like, it doesn't even matter if it's good. And sometimes I think it's like, if it's not good, good. Good if it's not good. Because how do you even know what's good or not? You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
sort of just going back to what we were saying too. If you're doing it from that sort of sacred place, you're transmitting a message, especially if you're opened up. And
Yes.
I think you can turn it on, like you said, just by like take that white canvas and start moving, and then something
Mhm.
will happen before your very eyes.
Yeah, get your mind out of the way and just let the hand start, and yeah, see what happens. Absolutely.
Wow. I'd like to talk a little bit about the psychedelic aspect on your channel with like doing psychedelics and stuff like that, because you do paint like a pretty picture of like all the amazing things that can come from taking a psychedelic and stuff like that. But I also know that there is also kind of like this dark side out there. Like I've looked into it before, and I've looked at people who've had like horrible trips, like never touched it again. Do you think you're just type of like maybe a person who has the right chemistry for it, or Like, have you ever had a terrible trip that you could talk about? Um, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've had a lot of, unpleasant trips, but I just have I would say it's mostly just that perspective. It's not like a biological thing. I just keep the perspective that if a trip is good, then yay, bonus. And if a trip is difficult, it's a lesson. Those are some of the more difficult trips, what a lot of people would consider bad trips, are the ones that have drastically taught me, it's kind of some tough love. I only really would consider something a true bad trip if someone gets like injured, which, hopefully not. But and that's never happened to me, no injuries. But mental bad trips, if I can keep the perspective of, instead of like just, getting consumed by it, being like, okay, what's the lesson here? What's this trying to show me? What do I need to change? And sometimes it's, the stuff we've been hiding under the carpet for a long time that we haven't wanted to didn't want to deal with, and it all comes out. But then it gets cleaned and we were like, okay, yeah, I haven't been addressing this and that, and I need to make this change, and I got to get serious about it even if it's not fun. And so those have been some of the most useful trips. And sometimes it's meant moving states, sometimes it's, changing life paths drastically, and it's uncomfortable, but it's very important. It's led me to a place where I'm now, where I feel very happy and very peaceful. And yeah, I love where I'm at.
It's just like real life, you know? It's just like the
Hmm.
struggles in conventional reality.
Hmm.
Like, I don't know if it's from the Bible or where the heck, but it talks about like after the birth is over and the moms, please don't attack me because I don't know what it's like to have a baby, but it's alluding to the fact that when a mother is holding the baby, she forgets about the labor, which like isn't true. It's just I'm trying to illustrate a point here that you can get to a place where you look back on your struggles and you feel the reward is so good, just the insight from it, that it's like okay now. You'd have to be stubbornly hold on to the pain of the past because you're like, what am I going to deny that I learned something? I'm going to deny that I went through something there. And it's a microcosm of that, or maybe a macrocosm of that when you go through a trip. It's like a mini hero's journey. You come out
Hmm.
of it, you've learned something, and real life is like that too. And meditation's like that too, really. When you go into just a regular old meditation and then you kind of start wrestling with the subconscious mind. You, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I've heard that there's no really such thing as a bad trip, like if it's like you said, it's a learning lesson. But the ones that come to mind are the ones where like I was stuck in there, felt like 40 years. I was gone for 40 years and I came back and it was like, and I was never the same again.
Yeah,
I was like, that sounds like,
but that's a thing that happens, right? Like sometimes there's a risk to some of this work, spiritual work,
Hmm.
and there's a risk in life, there's
yep.
like mortal risk in life, and sometimes people end up they bad things happen and they have to go through an epoch where they're dealing with that for a long time. But I think that there's always an opportunity to integrate the lessons from these things.
Yeah, especially I do want to mention, if someone keeps doing psychedelics and they keep having bad trips, they either need to stop and think like, hey, am I not applying the homework? Is that why I keep having these bad trips? Because if you, let's say, have a bad trip and it's like telling you, hey, you need to stop drinking or you need to eat
Yeah.
healthier, and it gets all dark, and come out and you're like, okay, like I know, but like you don't change it, and then you go back and you have another bad trip and it keeps happening, then you haven't been applying homework, right? So you got to
Yeah.
apply the homework. And for some people, if they have a lot of bad trips and they aren't seeing like any results, perhaps psychedelics aren't their medicine. It's one tool out of many tools.
Yeah.
Perhaps their medicine is meditation. Perhaps their medicine is being
Hypnosis.
in nature, hypnosis. There's so many other tools, and psychedelics aren't necessary for everybody. That's
That's a
something.
hardcore road. I'm gonna psychedelic my way out of my alcoholism. Like
Hmm.
because with a severe addiction, there's
Hmm.
eventually you're gonna have to likely go inward and then deal with the stuff that's literally causing you to kill yourself with substance.
Hmm.
I would
Yeah.
suggest sometimes professional help and all kinds of different
Yeah,
things. Be
absolutely.
safe
Yeah.
about it, but should know that it's a severe task and often
Hmm.
will require a plunge inwards. You
Yeah,
know.
yeah. If you're dealing with something very heavy, especially, it's very good to work with professionals and really consider which type of
Mm-hmm.
medicine not only psychedelics but other spiritual practices or other things is best for
Therapy.
your
Yeah.
particular your particular case. Hmm.
Hmm. Being in California, are there centers now? Because I know California is very progressive. Are they starting to be allowed to open up centers to have retreats and do things like this now?
I'm not sure how legal it is. I mostly now, since I've been in California, work, on my own. I like
Yeah.
doing my own ceremonies. I have my own setup and stuff. I know that I'm currently traveling in Colombia, and over here, I know it is legal, and they have like ayahuasca ceremonies, retreats, and stuff because it is part of the indigenous culture here, and also mushrooms and stuff. It's it's very ancient,
Yeah.
so I
Hmm.
don't know what the details are for California. I'm not up to all the legislation.
Is the vibe literally different where you are in those areas that are like where it's common for people to be using ayahuasca? Is it a different vibe?
Almost like, it's the people that would be doing it in the US, kind of like that crowd, like it's like the same, like it's kind of just as the same crowd that would be doing it here. Like the
Okay.
average person isn't interested in doing it, I would
Okay.
say, and
Yeah.
hasn't done it. It's very just like, regular life here. But the people that are gonna seek that out, then they can seek it out in a legal way.
Hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh. Is part of your art like maybe is part of your art sending a message towards hopefully opening the world up to a more liberated view on kind of psychedelics? Because that's what I kind of see in some of your art.
Yeah,
Some of
literally
it's
there's
pretty obvious, but
yeah, so like my legalized psychedelic
yes, that's the
poster, and
obvious
yeah,
stuff.
I have some posters that are very obvious, and uh I do think that these medicines should be legalized for multiple reasons. And when I say that, that doesn't mean that everybody should do it. That's something I want
Yeah.
to make very clear, and that it should be done responsibly by adults that, are, in a good state of mind. It shouldn't just be like, hey, let's everybody do it, because that
Yeah.
wouldn't be good. But when we have these substances being illegal, we're creating a whole black market for it. That makes it very unsafe. And that's where, a lot of things get, laced with fentanyl, and people don't know if what they're getting is what they're getting. They think they're getting LSD, but they get, a research chemical, or, they're getting ketamine, they get it with fentanyl, or, it makes it very risky. And they don't know sometimes what dosage they're getting. Some people think, hey, I'm going to get this much. And instead it ends up being way stronger. And, they get into a risky situation. And decriminalization still leaves room for that. Versus if we had legalization, we could, people that do choose to want to participate in these medicines, they could know they're getting the right dose, they're getting what they want to get that doesn't have anything else. And there'd be some degree of regulation so that it can be safer. And as adults, as, separate, beings here in this cosmos, we should have the opportunity to explore our consciousness if we choose to do it responsibly. And of course, that needs to come with a lot of education of what is it like to do these substances responsibly? What should we expect? So it has to come with a lot of education. And I think also legalization would open up a lot more opportunities for education, because right now, even posting stuff on certain social medias about it and stuff gets shut down because it's technically illegal. Versus if we opened up these doors, we could have more information about it so people could do it more responsibly. And yeah, I think it overall be really good. Especially, if someone does have like some intense trauma, they should seek it out with professionals. And but yeah, if someone's stable, an adult, responsible, they should be able to go and get the psychedelic they want and not have legal persecution over it. They should end up in jail for if they, took mushrooms in their house and saw that it was all up, right?
Yeah. And it's interesting because it seems like there's been a lot of study on how these substances can help people who are addicted to things like fentanyl, like I mentioned there, and other
Hmm.
terrible drugs, kick these things.
Yeah,
Like I feel like in the West we're almost behind, like in South America where they have these retreat centers to help people. And it seems like there's been a lot of people, being able to kick some pretty nasty habits by doing some of these
absolutely.
retreats and stuff like that.
That's why it's almost like ironic that they group all these things all together as drugs. when some
Yeah.
of them, can lead to such dark, deep addiction, and the other ones literally can get people out of those deep, dark addictions. Like psychedelics should be like their whole different category of drugs, right? Compared
They're
to
government regulated, right? Like psychedelics, meaning like what's something big that the government's concerned with? Money. Like I don't know why my whole life it hasn't been this case, but as of relatively recently, they made alcohol more available to the public. Like following COVID, the
Where we live, anyway.
yeah, in Canada where we live, following COVID, there seemed to be like a spike in alcohol usage, and then it started to taper off, and then it was like starting to get into the record low amounts of alcohol, and then next thing you know, you can buy it at gas stations. Like I talked to a gas station guy, and he said people come in, crack it, drink it in the bathroom, and then go out on the road. I'm like, what are you doing? I wonder if money has something to do with it. So just to like piece it all together, if what these things do is make people kind of have a different take on life and dehypnotize them from what the sort of social engineering that's going on to keep people
Mhm.
pumping money into the machine through addiction and recovery, this other alternative way out, it probably just, it's like, I don't know. All I know is it's associated with people that don't seem very traditional, and they don't
Mhm.
seem like they're trying to stand up straight and fly right. You know what I mean? So let's just keep it illegal. So there's a
Yeah,
lot could probably go on progressively in our society. Like
yeah, but also
intertwined with
consumption.
the access to this for people that really do need it would be I just think money is a factor in it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it can break some pretty deep embedded downloads that we have of, like consumption of like, if we have a
Yeah.
society that loves to consume from a point of unhappiness, let's say, hey, they don't feel happy, so they want to go buy more clothes or they want to do this. Versus if we find that inner peace and that inner satisfaction, let's say through a psychedelic journey, perhaps there's not such a drive of consumption. And that can be, not profitable, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's totally could. One aspect I wanted to ask you about was your thoughts on psychedelic experiences and in reference to enlightenment. There's a guy I followed years ago, like I was put onto his stuff through a guy named Leo Gura, and the guy that I'm talking about, his name is Martin Ball, and he claimed that something like he did so much 5-MeO DMT that he got enlightened. He like did it over and over and over and over till he broke through, and then he was like enlightened, like the Buddha, I guess, or something like enlightened,
Mm,
enlightened. Um, and I'm curious about that because when you talk about these, like when you people got to check out your artwork, it's like looking into a different dimension. It's awesome. But when you look at it, it's all very visual and mystical, and it transmits a message. It can make you feel something just looking at it, right? But that's one aspect. And then the fact that you meditate in your conscious regular life, not tripping or not going on a psychedelic journey, that you have the practice of meditation. I'm wondering where baseline consciousness intersects with these psychedelic events, you know what I mean, that are full of content. You know, what's the overlap? What can you say about that? I know that was a really disjointed and kind of difficult question, but
yeah, I got you. I got you. So I would say if there is a substance that can, more directly and more like quickly lead to very intense going to the mountaintop of consciousness, I would say it is 5-MeO for sure.
yeah,
It has, I would say consciousness is like a mountain. And these substances are like, can be like elevators that can take us to different degrees of altitude in this mountain. And when you go high enough, it gets pretty visual, pretty fractally, and then you go higher, and then it's all dissolves into light, into love, into formless. Um, and of course, with let's say something like regular NN-DMT, you can usually get transported. It usually stops in the floor of the fractals, right? But you can use it to go higher. You know, if you know how to work with it. Or same with mushrooms, can get you into very trippy states, but you can potentially use it to go into the formless realm. And things like lucid dreaming, very deep meditation. But the thing to realize is that 5-MeO is the one that let's say is most likely to take you to the top floor, but you're still getting there through a synthetic means, something from external. So it's taking you to the top floor, or if you use another psychedelic to take you to the top floor, it still brings you back down, right? That elevator. And after some time, you realize that to stay at that top floor, usually you have to climb the mountain with your own hands and feet through things like meditation, because meditation doesn't use anything external. It's just you.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my current practice. Is to I've been taken to that top floor enough times to I know it exists, but now I'm doing it with my own hands and feet, trying to climb
Yeah.
it with meditation.
Yeah.
But I would say if someone works with something like 5-MeO a lot, they've gone to that top floor so many times that perhaps they might be able to see what the quickest, most direct path is, right?
Yeah.
They've gone up so many times, they're like, okay, it's this path. I know exactly, like, no going around, no like
Yeah.
losing my way. I'm going straight there. I already know it so well that it can potentially speed up that process.
Some of what you've said seems to reflect like a big message that you can take back from these other realms or other states of consciousness is like an insight into the game that's behind all this, like a kind of a coming home, a realization that takes the pressure off all of this. And it's a little dark, but I often like part of what has allowed me to have a little bit less pressure in my life over the years as I've gone along is thinking about the fact that like it's impermanent. Like, oh, I'm gonna die. Like, wait a second, what's gonna die here? My story's gonna die. This vessel's gonna die. So what's left? And that alone, that questionnaire can lead you towards some deeper presence in reality. But the other side of it is insight into the mystical and being like, there's something greater going on. So the little petty human stuff takes the pressure off of it. I'm curious about that comparison. The insight into, I guess, godly things versus the insight into like impermanence, like the both of those things. I don't know, the balance of impermanence. What's permanent? What exactly is permanent? What's going to make it? And versus, oh, there's a big plan going on, and there's like a lesson to be learned here, and all that stuff. How real is the aspect of it? This is how I'll round the question up. How real is the aspect of it that is these other deities, the Hindu gods and everything, they're real, and that there's like a purpose to all this versus just let go of all that concept stuff. That's all going to slough off like rotten dead wood and realize what's ever present. How do they intersect? You know what I mean?
I would say the deepest states of truth are such a paradox, and that's the thing. Like the deepest state of truth is it all matters, but it all doesn't matter, right? Like this role, it's so important, but at the same time, it doesn't. Like it's all impermanent, but at the same time, there's something that is so permanent, that deeper awareness. So I would say it's like the deepest state of truths are paradoxes.
Yeah, wonderful. I wanted to say something like, because I play it pretty close to the chest about like my own experiences in this show. I'm not as brave as you to divulge as much stuff, but in an alternate state of consciousness one time, I don't know, maybe I was drank too much chamomile tea. One of the things I remarked back then was that at one point it was like involuntary meditating, meaning for one of the first times in my life, I saw my internal dialogue like a transcript, and I didn't really see it. It's more like I perceived it like I perceived my character going, oh my God, blah, 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 but it wasn't me looking at it. You know what I mean? That was one of the first windows, is like a separation, almost like disassociation. You know what I mean? Like if you want to put it in a negative way, you could say it was disassociation. But even in that disassociated state, it gave me an idea about like about the mind structure and what it's up to. And it's, I'm not doing it. It's like reading off like a teleprompter. Like it's, where do all these thoughts come from? You ever have any experiences similar to that or anything like that?
Yeah, I have these experiences for sure where it's almost like I'm just seeing this role, this act of Juliana play out.
Like a mask.
It's kind of
like a robot or something.
I like to look at it like almost like I was talking about this mountain of consciousness. And the irony is that we're already at the mountaintop in each moment. It's nowhere else but here. But we just have this like fancy VR headset of samsara, of existence, of the cosmic game, that's distracting us. But if we like become calm enough, become still enough, we realize, that we're already there. So sometimes I'll just be kind of doing my thing, playing my role, and I'll kind of see beyond. I don't know how to describe. I've made some artworks, but I'll kind of see beyond the VR headset, where it's like all this infinite, vast love and like formlessness. And I see like, okay, this is playing out, and I have like almost like one foot there, one foot here, and it ironically it doesn't make this less important. It makes it more enjoyable because it's fun.
Right.
It's not
And
as
you're more
serious.
conscious now too. It's like,
Mhm.
it's getting ridiculous. The more atheistic I am, the more I quote the Bible for some stupid reason. Actually, that's not quite true either. I'm just trying to say, like, don't get your hopes up. I'm not a Christian, but I do quote the Bible a lot. And when it says stuff like, count it all joy when you face trials of any kind and stuff like that, it's like, if you knew the reality, when you were so many things that you were going through, you'd be like, you'd revel in it. You'd be like, wow, this is what a show. Look at all the stuff that's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. And even that's when it gets kind of tricky is even the dark stuff. If
Yes.
we are
Hard to talk
infinite,
about.
yeah, even if we are infinite consciousness, because so many times I say, hey, it's like it's all beautiful, it's all perfect, but a lot of people get pretty triggered by that, and
Mm-hmm,
it depends
mm-hmm.
what floor you're looking at that perspective from. Because if you are here and you are looking at some of the things happening in the world, it is tragic, absolutely. But if you step into a place where it is all illusion and it's playing out, and if you step into the awareness that it's all one, and from there created this cosmic game. And after a while, it doesn't just want to experience pleasant stuff. It wants to experience also the dark stuff, the
Mm-hmm.
unpleasant stuff, the lessons, the hardship. And it wants to see this, be part of this movie that has you on the edge of your seat of, oh man, death
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
hurt and pain. And that's what's the most enticing, what gets you the deepest into believing you're in a movie. Then it
Yeah.
is perfect also, right?
I feel like good advice for either the spiritual seeker or the psychonaut, or overlap of the two, is don't be stubborn. Don't be stubborn. Don't resolve things to need to be away, because if you can let go of if anybody can let go of their stubbornness, like let go being the key word, you're right. You might be utterly shocked at not only what you can tolerate, but what you can start to have like a fascination in. And that sounds almost ominous. Like, I don't even want to explore that any further, but it seems like you know a little bit about that already. I don't think you'd be able
Yeah.
to tolerate bad trips without that insight.
Yeah, and that's something that in Buddhist practice is done quite a lot, is to observe everything that happens with equanimity, with non-reaction, with
Mm-hmm.
peace,
Mm-hmm.
without aversion or attraction. Because if we're constantly like having aversion and attraction towards things, we are getting very emotionally involved. But if we can create this inner sanctuary that whatever happens through the sense doors, and we start to see it as that, as just things that happen through the sense doors, sight, sound, and we create this inner sanctuary, then nothing that happens in day-to-day life, really penetrates that inner sanctuary. We create this safety of peace, right?
I'm
Mm-hmm.
curious to know about within the trips and all the meditation that you've done and stuff like that. Maybe you could talk about maybe one of the hardest truths you ever received as an insight that you like needed to integrate or accept, and maybe one of the best truths that you ever received and was maybe easy to integrate, accept.
Hardest truths. Let's see. I mean, there's none that have been that like kind of unpleasant. I would say there was a one of the kind of hardest to integrate, ironically, was the lack of desire for anything, which was
Yeah.
really, really nice.
The ego will
Especially
have a field
after,
day with that one.
yeah,
Oh, I don't want to
especially
do anything anymore all of a
yeah,
sudden.
but it wasn't like I don't want to do anything, everything sucks. It was like I don't want to do anything. I'm fully satisfied. Ironically, that was one of the
Good.
hardest things to integrate, especially after a 5-MeO journey. Um, I started to email temples and like Buddhist monasteries to become a nun because I was like, I
Whoa.
don't want to do it. I don't want to. I'm fully satisfied. I don't want to make any art. I just want to sit here and just enjoy bliss, right? Like I'm just fully satisfied. And
Wow.
it removed any addiction I had for craving for, hey, like let's do stuff, let's let's go out, let's see. And I was just sitting on my couch in pure bliss, and that's all I needed. And ironically, that was one of the hardest things to integrate, because after a while I was like, okay, let me get back in my role, let me start, continue with my art and whatnot. So it was one of the most blissful, but ironically one of the hardest things to integrate. It was extreme unaddiction to everything.
How did that process start up? Like for people that are rounding that corner and they're about to be sitting around doing nothing, what does it look like when the brain starts coming back on and like creating? I guess what is even created out of that? What is the new structure that starts to develop, and why would you listen to its prompts?
Yeah, so it does start to trickle in after a while, and but it's a great opportunity because you had like this gap of kind of, you know, awareness of non-addiction, of, being fully satisfied. So you can, once you kind of start to trickle back in, it gives you this opportunity, like, what am I going to let back in, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it gives an opportunity to kind of stop and reconsider your path, you consider so many things. And for me, after a while, I was like, okay, I do want to continue to be in the world, not ordain. I want to keep making art to try to raise the collective consciousness, and I feel like I can make a bigger impact out of a monastery than I can in a monastery. And doing things like
Preferences. It
this.
sounds like just
Yeah, yeah,
regular old
yeah,
run-of-the-mill preferences start to
yeah,
reemerge.
yeah, start
Yeah,
to
nothing wrong
reemerge.
with that.
Yeah, yeah. And I would say, for your question of one of the most beautiful insights is just realizing that it is all good, it is all perfect. Just that space of infinite awareness. I think that if in this lifetime, as many humans can tap into that space of source, of infinite love, it really puts everything else into perspective, and is so inspiring. And if one can hold that in one's heart more and more in daily life, I think it makes this life so much more enjoyable, so much more peaceful, even if we just experience it once. And that can be through deep meditation, through 5-MeO, through so many different ways. But having that little experience, I've had the ability to experience it a handful of times, which I'm so grateful for. But even just like once, knowing that it's possible, that being aware of that space, that realm of that is here somewhere else, it's just here, but that is just infinite vast love. It's like a parent's love times a billion, and it's all light, everything's there but nothing's there, and it's home. And having even just a second of experiencing that is so, I think, valuable in a human experience.
I've seen people get choked up just talking about it.
Yeah.
I feel like some important things here are what you said about experience. I think like it should be said that you don't have to do psychedelics to take this path of wanting to know about the type of consciousness we're talking about. Strong meditation practice and seeking that way could lead you. And then the other thing I was going to say is, oddly enough, a weird aspect of it is like the word letting go comes to mind, but that's a thing. It's like, because it's almost like that's why experience becomes so important, because it's like you got to let go of letting go, even potentially here. You know what I mean? Like a hang up, I think, that can happen sometimes with people in meditation is that they're seeking relief from what's going on. You know what I mean? Rather than just seeing. You know what I mean? Like I'm not sure how to quite word it, I suppose. But it seems like oftentimes in this pursuing or seeking or not facing what's happening just consciously. I don't know. That's all I have to say about that. Whatever that was that I just said.
Well, Juliana, I want to thank you so much for joining us on the show today and sharing some of your insights, talking about your art and your channel. It's been really great having you on the show. Maybe to close things out, a good thing maybe for our audience and your audience, everyone who's watching, might be to maybe leave with them your overarching message, maybe from your art and your channel and who you are. And then after that, maybe let our audience know where they can find you, what you got going on, and all that good stuff.
Well, what's most important is smile, enjoy each moment, be here. Don't let the mind, lie to you that, of all these things. Just be here, enjoy this moment, enjoy this breath. And may all beings be happy and well. If you'd like to have some souvenirs of various realms, I like to make art about them. You can check them out at julianagarcesart.com, and you can find me on social media under Juliana Garces Art. And yeah, we'd love to connect, and lots of love.
Thank you. Beautiful. Thank you so much for being on the show.